It all began with little details that I initially attributed to fatigue. Marianne had always been the perfect wife, cooking my favorite dishes, keeping the house in order, and never being late for family dinners. But things had started to change over the last few months. We lived in a typical suburban cottage in Seattle, where all the houses looked like twins. 2 stories, 3 bedrooms, a living room with a huge flat-screen TV that we hardly ever watched, and a spacious kitchen with modern appliances. Our neighbors on the right, Jim and Linda, regularly held barbecues in their backyard, while an elderly professor who enjoyed walking his dachshund in the mornings lived to the left. Marianne worked as an interior designer while I was a lawyer at a mid-sized firm. Our life flowed steadily, weekdays filled with work, weekends with joint walks or restaurant visits. We didn't have children, but we never regretted it. Our connection seemed strong enough for 2 people. The first alarming sign was that Marianne started spending more time away from home. She explained it by a new project, renovating an old mansion on the outskirts of town. "There's such a mess there that I have to be constantly on site," she said, smiling her soft smile that always calmed me down. But for some reason, this smile seemed forced to me now. I noticed how she began checking her phone more often, sometimes even during our conversations. Her fingers moved across the screen faster than usual, and she often left her phone face down, which she only did accidentally before. One night, I woke up and saw the light of her phone in the darkness. She was lying on her side, scrolling through messages and didn't hear me watching her. Marian had always been a person with strong inner discipline. At 35, she maintained a slim figure thanks to regular runs and healthy eating. Her long chestnut hair was always perfectly styled, and her makeup was natural yet flawless. I knew every one of her habits, how she brewed tea, how she folded clothes, how she held a book while reading before bed. But something had changed. She started using perfume more often, though she used to prefer a light citrus scent. Now it was a sweeter, more intimate aroma that I hadn't noticed before. Her wardrobe was updated with new items, elegant blouses, short skirts, high-heeled shoes, and she began applying makeup more frequently before leaving for work. "Just want to look professional," she explained when I commented on her appearance, but her eyes avoided mine, and I noticed a slight flush on her cheeks. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. Marianne wasn't there, although she said she would be working until 6. Her phone was on the kitchen table. It was unlocked. She always forgot to turn off the automatic unlock feature after use. Messages from an unknown number appeared every day. They were short but meaningful. "Can't wait for our meeting. You're incredible. These moments with you are the brightest." My heart raced as I read her replies. "Me too. Thank you for understanding. Let's meet today." I felt like a traitor reading those lines. Every word cut me like a knife. This wasn't just a fling. It was a real emotional connection she was hiding from me. I put the phone back in place and felt the room start spinning around me. In the following days, I became more observant. I noticed how she got nervous when receiving messages, how her fingers trembled when writing responses, how she became especially lively and energetic after these conversations. Then I found his picture. On one of the work documents she left on the kitchen table, there was a note with a name and phone number. When I Googled his name, the first result was a LinkedIn page. Alex Taylor, architect, 37 years old, specializes in restoring historic buildings. His photo showed a confident man with blue eyes and a wide smile. I continued to watch her, though each step was difficult. One evening, I decided to check her car. It was parked near the very mansion she talked about. I drove closer and saw them through the window. They were sitting in a bar nearby, laughing and touching each other's hands. Their bodies were turned toward each other, their faces glowing with joy that I hadn't seen on my wife's face in a long time. When I returned home, I felt broken. Thoughts swirled in my head. How did this happen? Why did she choose him? What did I do wrong? But most of all, I was troubled by the feeling of betrayal, not only from her side but also from mine, because I kept watching her instead of speaking my mind. The next day, I tried to talk to her. "Marianne, I feel like something is happening between us." I began carefully during dinner. She looked at me with her big brown eyes, which had always been so warm and sincere. "What do you mean?" she asked, too quickly, too sharply. Her voice wavered, and I saw her hands start to shake. I know about Alex, I said directly, deciding to end this game of hide and seek. Her reaction was immediate. Her face went pale, her hands clenched into fists, and her eyes filled with tears. How did you find out? She whispered, and there was surprise rather than defense in her voice. We sat silently for a long time until she began to explain about how they met on the job for this project, how he paid attention to her ideas, how he understood her creative impulses, how he supported her when work got too hard. She admitted that she had been looking for this attention, which in her opinion was missing in our marriage. And what about me? I asked, feeling bitterness rising in my throat. Wasn't I a good husband? Didn't I try? You were the perfect husband, she replied, and her voice cracked. Too perfect. Sometimes it seemed to me that you saw me only as part of your perfect world, not as a person with desires and needs. We decided to take a break in our relationship. She moved in with her brother while I stayed in our home, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. A month later, she called and said she wanted to talk. We met in that very bar where I first saw them together. Alex is no longer in my life, she said, looking me straight in the eye. I realized I made a mistake, but I also realized that I want to preserve our marriage if you're willing to try. I didn't know what to say. Bitterness, betrayal, and hope mixed in my head. Maybe we should try to restore what we lost. But maybe this experience had already changed us forever. When we stepped outside, the sun was setting behind the horizon, painting the sky in pink and purple hues. Marianne extended her hand and I hesitated before accepting it. But eventually our fingers intertwined, and I felt that perhaps we still had a chance, although not the same as before. Months passed after our last meeting. Life returned to its previous course. Work, daily duties, familiar faces on the street. But something inside me had changed. Now I look at people differently, noticing details that once seemed insignificant. I see how colleagues exchange glances, how neighbors go on dates, how couples argue in cafes. Marianne continued to call, offer meetings, talk about possible changes. But every time I postponed the decision, feeling unready, maybe I'll never be ready. Perhaps the betrayal, not just the act, but the fracture in the foundation of trust, can't always be repaired. Sometimes I imagine how things could have been if I had noticed the first signs earlier. If I had been more attentive, more open to her needs. But maybe that was exactly what led to everything that happened. Too much control, too little freedom. Now I stand by the bedroom window, looking at the lit windows of neighboring houses. The sound of rain hits the glass, a constant companion of Seattle winters. In my hands is a cup of tea that she always brewed in the mornings, and I think about how the decision is still open. Maybe we can find a new way to be together. Maybe we'll come to understand that marriage isn't just love, but also the ability to forgive and change. Or maybe the time has passed, and the best choice is to let each other live separately, preserving the good memories that remain. At this moment, the phone rings. It's her. Her voice is calm but slightly trembling. Do you want to talk? She asks, and I feel my heart beating faster. Yes, I answer, but the words stick in my throat, because the decision still hasn't been made, and perhaps there is no right answer. Only time will show how our story unfolds. And while I listen to her voice, feeling the rain tapping on the glass, I realize that answering now is impossible, because there may be no final answer. Only waiting, hoping, and making decisions that will change us both.